Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वंशकल्पातरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So here we are. Um, Today we will be covering chapter 1 of the Nectar of Devotion. And chapter 1 is actually divided into two parts because it's such an important chapter. And so normally we would do it over 2 weeks. But since I missed last week, for which I apologize, we will be doing both parts today. So we will be covering chapter 1 in full, which is very nice. Now we have 19 chapters, so you might be thinking, how will we cover all of them if we're just doing it like this? But there's only about 7 or 8 lessons total in the Nectar Devotion, and so all the other chapters will be covered in like 6 weeks. So we're making good progress. Don't worry, we will cover it rapidly. These initial chapters are very important. They are the cornerstone, the foundation of the entire nectar of devotion, and actually the entire process of bhakti. And therefore, we are spending so much time on them. Therefore, we are focusing on them because they are the foundation of bhakti. So we'll start with this small prayer to Rupa Goswami, to the 6 Goswamis, of whom Rupa Goswami is one of them, since he is the author of this book. Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipuno Sadharma Sanstapako Loka Nam Hitakarino Tribhuvane Manyo Sharanyakaro Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajana Nandena Mataliko Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghujugo Shri Jiva Gopalako. So this verse is describing the greatness of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, and the translation of this verse is as follows. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, namely Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Raghunatha Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopala Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus, they are honored all over the three worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Shri Shri, Radha, and Krishna. So they're very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures for the benefit of all human beings. They're honored all over the three worlds, and they're in the mood of the gopis, engaged in the transcendental loving service of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna. So these are their great qualities, and therefore the nectar of devotion is written for this purpose, to tell us the eternal religious principles so that we can engage in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna in the mood of the gopis. So last time, quick recap since it's been 2 weeks, we covered the first verse of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Anya vilashita shunyam jnana karma dhinavritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktir uttama. So our bhakti, pure devotional service, is anya bilashita shunyam. It is without material desires. It is not covered or uncovered by monistic philosophy and fruitive action. There's no tinge of impersonalism or fruitive action in pure devotion, meaning there's no ulterior motivation, right? No fruitive action. No fruit is wanted. Selfless for the pleasure of Krishna, and no impersonalism. Very personal, very to Krishna the person. It is favorably done. It is not unfavorably like the demons. The demons, they are also doing bhakti because they're constantly thinking of Krishna, but they're doing it unfavorably. So their bhakti is bhakti, but it's not pure bhakti. The devotee is doing it favorably. Krishnanu, in relationship to Krishna, only for Krishna. Pure devotional service can only be in relationship with Krishna, his devotees, his paraphernalia. It cannot be in relationship to anything else. Otherwise, the love will never be selfless. Because why is this the case? What's the logical reason? The reason was because pure love is unlimited, only Krishna is unlimited, so therefore only Krishna can be the object of pure love. Any other object will not be able to reciprocate or accept pure love. And what was the example that we gave for this? It was the example of the light, the beam of light that, imagine, comes out of a flashlight in the darkness. And when you aim it towards the sky, although the beam of light is limited, the light that comes out of that flashlight expands unlimitedly into the sky. In the same way, bhakti is like that. Bhakti comes from a limited source, which is us. But bhakti itself is unlimited in nature, which today we will see why that's the case. And it expands unlimitedly. And the only person who can receive that, or the only person in which one can find the satisfaction of unalloyed love, is Krishna. That's the only place where our devotion can be exhibited or find satisfaction or can actually take place, because Krishna is unlimited like that beam of light. Shilanam, it's anushilanam. It is a cultivation of service. It is activity done by following the scriptures and devotees. So it's not inaction, it is action, but not also whimsical action. That is not devotion. That is not pure devotion to Krishna. It is action that is done with intelligence in the disciplic succession, that is under the guidance of the devotees, particularly the spiritual master, and that bhakti is bhakti uttama. That is first class devotional service. So this was the definition of pure devotional service that the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu gives. And I apologize, this is not the first verse. This is the 11th verse of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, but the first verse that we discuss. And this is the translation, the way Prabhupada translates it. When first-class devotional service develops, one must be devoid of all material desires, knowledge obtained by monistic philosophy, and fruit of action. The devotee must constantly serve Krishna favorably as Krishna desires. So constantly is another word, and I actually forgot this in telling this to you. Pure devotion is something that is constant. Now, in the next verse, Rupa Goswami, so this is new material now, he further elaborates on the definition of pure devotional service. He says, pure devotional service is sarvopadhi vinirmuktam, tat paratvena nirmalam, hrishikena hrishikesha, sevanam bhaktir uchyate. So what is pure devotional service? Following what I just told you, following what we just read, it is sarvopadhi vinirmuktam. It is free from all material designations. So when there's anya bilashita shunyam, when there is no other ulterior motivation, then there's also no other material consideration, meaning that there's no material designation. Pure bhakti is beyond material designations. Very important point, and I'll come back to this. Tat paratvena nirmalam. Its sole purpose is serving Krishna. Nothing else, uncontaminated by any other purpose. So, in the Anya Vilashata Shunyam, which word epitomized, or you could say, was a synonym for this sentence? Or words? Which words were similar to these words in the previous verse?
Was it Anyabhilashita Shunyam?
Anyabhilashita Shunyam.
Krishna Anushilanam.
Yes, Krishna Anushilanam. Because, or Krishnanu, Krishna Anushilanam. So it's, and also Anukulyena Krishnanu. So it is done for the purpose, favorably, conscientiously, it's done for serving Krishna, nothing else. So going back here, Anukulyena Krishnanu, favorably done, or meaning conscientiously with full purpose for Krishna. So the purpose is serving Krishna, and there's no other contamination there. Then, as Param Karuna Prabhu mentioned, what about the Shilanam part, the activity part? That is in this sentence. Hrishikena Hrishikesha. It is Hrishikena, it is done by the senses, Hrishikesha, for the master of the senses. By the senses, for or of the master of the senses. So this is genitive case, this is instrumental case in Sanskrit. Hrishikena Hrishikesha. So this is Anushilanam, that bhakti is not just sentiment, it is activity. And activity includes the senses. We may recall that in the Bhagavad Gita, the senses are not just the 5 senses. We have also the 5 working senses, the hands, the legs, the arms. So all of those senses, the knowledge acquiring senses, the working senses, we had, I think, like 15 senses. What was it? I am trying to remember. We had so many senses. All of those senses are engaged in the service of the master of the senses. So this is bhakti. Bhakti is not ending the senses. Bhakti is not finishing, or you could say, annihilating the senses like the other yoga processes. But bhakti is very active in terms of the senses. It is very sensual in nature. So we think, oh, sense gratification is very bad. But bhakti is sense gratification, Prabhupada says. It is true gratification of the senses, but not with ordinary material senses. It is purified senses in the service of the master of the senses. So it is not sense gratification for oneself, but it is sense gratification for the senses of Krishna. Rupa Goswami, he gives the analogy of iron and gold. He says lust and love are the same thing, except there's a difference of quality. Lust is enjoying my senses. That is like iron. So it's enjoyment of the senses, but enjoying my senses. Love is also enjoying the senses, but enjoying the sense, but bringing enjoyment to Krishna's senses. Love is bringing enjoyment to the senses of the beloved. So Hrishikena Hrishikesha, engaging one's senses in the service of the Lord. And Rupa Goswami, by saying this, is giving such a simple, clear definition of bhakti, that such a powerful, this is adding to the first verse, that bhakti is fully absorbing our senses in Krishna. So we can think that, well, how can I serve Krishna? Well, whatever senses I have, whatever things I do, and whatever thoughts I think of, and whatever emotions, feelings, all these things, I can invest them in Krishna. I like to paint, I like to do artwork. This is a very sensual activity. Being a musician or an artist, very sensual. Being a businessman, all very sensual activities. And I can engage these senses in Krishna's service, and that will become pure devotion if I do it in a purified way. Sevanam bhaktir uchyate. This is called, uchyati, comes from bach, which means to speak. It is called sevanam bhaktir uchyate. So this is called devotion, bhakti. So going back to the sarvopadhi vinirmuktam, this is in addition to having no ulterior motives, no ulterior desires, it's free from material designations. And this sentence is the basis of Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON society. Why Srila Prabhupada felt that bhakti transcends the borders of any country, it transcends the limitations, or you could say the restrictions of caste, creed, race, and it also transcends the limitations of gender, man or woman. If we think that bhakti is limited by these things, then we're not practicing pure bhakti. Pure bhakti is not limited by any material designation. And His Holiness Radha Govinda Maharaj, who, he grew up in India in a very traditional family, very orthodox, you could say. One would think, materially speaking, the last person to say this, but he said that in the context of bhakti, in devotional activities, in devotional service, in service to Krishna, ultimately there's no restriction between, or you could say no limitation or restrictions between men or women. There's no distinction. You want to say, how is this possible? He says, women, if they want, they can even have the shikha. They can have the shikha. They can, do all the activities that the men do, because bhakti is free and above of all material designations. At the same time, however, because we're living in a material world, we also need to understand that though bhakti is above all material designations, and we always have to remember that we cannot limit it, we cannot feel that the Westerners or the Indians, they cannot practice bhakti properly, or the men or the women cannot. But due to material circumstances, we do need to adjust the external manifestation of bhakti. We may have to adjust the external manifestation. So, and a very obvious example is, right, that men oftentimes in the process of archana, they don't wear a shirt. They just wear, a chadar. Now, in the time of Haridas Thakur, for example, when he converted the prostitute to a devotee, uh, during that time, the mendicant women also would not wear a shirt. They would also just wear a cloth around, like the sari, they would wrap around uh, their chest. And in this way, cover themselves, but they would not wear a shirt. But now, in today's society, the external manifestation of that is not possible. People will think that we're indecent, and we will be indecent. It will be a disservice to the society, right? But the external manifestation of bhakti does modify according to time, place, and circumstance, according to the instructions of the pure devotees. But internally, there's no difference in the practice of bhakti. Another example of this is the order of sannyas. Prabhupada made it clear that men get the order of sannyas, but women do not. However, he also made it clear that internally, women can be completely renounced and they can be sannyasis. So they do take the stage of sannyas, and we have many women in our movement who are more renounced or as renounced as men sannyasis. But externally, they will not take the danda and all these things. Most women also will not shave their head and have a shikha, although I have seen some women and they do it, and there's nothing wrong with it. So, very key point that after this chapter, we will be discussing the principles of bhakti. And these principles, Rupa Goswami is giving them for the sadhaka. He does not limit it to any nationality, gender, race, or caste, or creed. They're for the sadhaka. They're for everyone. And therefore, they're sarvabadhi. They're free from all material designations. For the service of Krishna, no other impurity. And the key thing is a very obvious point, but a point that we forget, that bhakti is about the senses. This is what makes bhakti so powerful. In other processes, the first requirement is that a person has to be a renunciate. Either you have to be a brahmachari or a sannyasi. The householders are not allowed in the yoga processes. The householders are considered unqualified in the impersonalist and the mystic meditation processes. It's a fact. Shankaracharya, he said the first requirement in his process is that you have to be a renunciate. It's only in the process of bhakti that everyone can be part of it. Going back to this point of sarvapadi vinirmuktam. Why? Because bhakti is actually glorifying the senses. It's actually engaging the senses rather than limiting them, rather than restricting them. And this is bhakti. So a very important verse to memorize and to remember. So the translation of this verse is, bhakti or devotional service means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is freed from all material designations. One does not think that one is the body. And one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. So, Jiva Goswami's commentary on this verse brings further light to this verse. In this verse, Tat Paratvena, with devotion to him, taking him as the highest object, is the equivalent of Anukulyena. So back here, remember I asked you, Tat Paratvena is the same as Anukulyena, which is for Krishna. Sarvopadi Vinirmuktam, devoid of all conditions, is equivalent to Anya Vilashata Shunya. Sevanam is equivalent to Anushilanam, activity. Activity means seva, service. Nirmalam, without blemish, is the equivalent of jnana karmadinavratam. The superior nature of this bhakti, uttamatvam, is understood by its very nature, and thus it is not stated in words. So one may say that this verse, and this is a question I had, just says Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. It just says this is bhakti. It doesn't say this is Shuddha Bhakti. But here Rupa Goswami is clarifying that this is assumed, that this is a definition of not just bhakti, but Uttama Bhakti, highest bhakti. So here Srila Prabhupada explains these verses in very nice words and very, very touching, very powerful words. So Krishna is the proprietor of the senses, and we should not use anything of the master without the permission of the master. And therefore the devotee takes permission from the Lord before engaging any of his senses. And the permission may come through the devotees or through the scripture or through the spiritual master. So again, it's not whimsical how we engage our senses. For example, we cannot go to a disco party and then, think I'm chanting and so therefore I'm doing disco. The senses are engaged with the permission of Krishna. And this is a quote from Giriraj Maharaj. But Srila Prabhupada said that a pure devotee does not engage any of his senses without first taking permission from the Lord. And once Srila Prabhupada told one disciple, you don't move this pen from this place on the table to this place on the table without my permission. So this is bhakti. So just on this quote, especially when the spiritual master is present, of course, the devotee follows the instruction of the spiritual master when the spiritual master is not present. But when the spiritual master is present, the disciple takes guidance on every stage of his life, for every step of his life, as far as possible. And that is bhakti, when we take guidance, not whimsical. So that's the principle. Of course, Prabhupada had a certain context when he was speaking this. He was probably speaking to his personal secretary or to the devotees. If we are far away from the spiritual master, we cannot text him every time we need to move a pen. But the idea is that Prabhupada here is giving us the feeling that the devotee takes guidance, is eager to take guidance, so that every step in life is successful. One time, Janardhan Maharaj, who is now Bhakti, I forget his sannyas name, he is a sannyas disciple of my spiritual master, and he said, he said that his success was, he said, everything just ask your spiritual master. Don't do anything without his permission. So everything he would ask, should I do this? How should I do this? And whatever, every step, not the key thing is not so much asking so much, but every important step that he took in life, he took it with permission or blessings of the spiritual master or the spiritual master's representative. And thus he was very successful. So now, having discussed this definition, we now move to the 6 characteristics of pure devotional service. Pure bhakti, this was the definition that we just discussed. Now, once we are practicing pure bhakti, that pure bhakti will have 6 characteristics. 6 ways by which we can identify that this is pure devotion, or 6 qualities of that pure devotion, 6 results of that pure devotion. So what are these 6? Okay, so quickly, the objectives today are to perform an overview of the 6 characteristics of pure devotional service, particularly define Kleshagni. This is the objectives for this lesson. Explain why devotional service is the best means of obtaining relief from distress. So, in these 6 characteristics, the first one is most important. And this first lesson, the whole lesson is just on the first one. And the second lesson is on the next 5. And we'll see why. So this is the actual verse that's describing the 6 characteristics of pure devotional service in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It is 1:117. Kleshagni Shubhada Moksha Laguta Krit Sudurlabha Sandrananda Visheshatma Shri Krishna Karshani Cha Sa. First one, Kleshagni. Second is Shubhada. Third is Moksha Lagutakrit. Fourth is Sudurlabha. Fifth is Sandrananda Visheshatma. And the sixth is Shri Krishna Karshani. So the first one, Kleshagni, is pure devotional service brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. So I think some of us on this call, many of you not because you are very advanced devotees, but some of us on this call are feeling some material distress, right? We feel distressed at times, right? We feel some pain, some suffering, some mental distress, some physical distress. Well, for us, the good news is that when we practice pure devotional service, there will be immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. And if we are experiencing material distress, then it means that we are not practicing pure devotional service. So we can see that how pure devotional service is not an ordinary thing. It is not an ordinary stage of life. Imagine the first characteristic, the first quality of pure love, of pure devotion to Krishna, is that there will be no suffering. Okay. The second, Shubhada, is that pure devotional service is the beginning of all auspiciousness. Or another way, another translation of this, which I think is better or more simpler, is Shubhada means pure devotional service is all auspicious. It's the beginning of all auspiciousness, and it is all auspicious. So other things in this world are auspicious for some people, but inauspicious for others. If President Biden increases the taxes, it is auspicious for the middle class and for the poor, but it is inauspicious for the wealthy. If President Trump reduces taxes, it is auspicious for the wealthy and inauspicious for those who are poor. So in the material world, whichever decision you make, whatever you do, it's auspicious for one person, but it's definitely inauspicious for someone else. Why is this? Because the material world is a zero-sum game. If you take $50, then someone else is losing $50. But bhakti is that one thing that is auspicious for everyone. So if a rich man performs bhakti, it's auspicious for him, and it's also auspicious for those who are poor. If a poor man performs bhakti, it's auspicious for the poor man, but also for the rich man. Where in this material world do you find anything like this? Anything that is auspicious for every single person in this world. And if you find that, then that is pure bhakti. That is pure devotional service. So one can never say that a pure devotee or someone performing pure devotional service is doing something that is inauspicious for another person. If a pure devotee is performing pure devotional service, by the very definition of pure devotional service, it has to be auspicious for everyone. And we see this in the pastimes of the Lord, just like when Narad Muni comes and instigates Kansa to kill the other children of Devaki. One might think how inauspicious this is. If, Kansa had had a good moment and he was being kind to the other children. He thought, I'll just not kill the first 7 before the 8th child, who is Krishna, comes. And Narad Muni goes and tells him, no, he could be any of these. And he goes and kills all 8 children of Vasudeva and Devaki. And you think, how cruel. Then Vasudeva and Devaki lose all 8 of their children. And they're great devotees. Why is Narad Muni doing this? Well, from the scriptures, we understand that those other children, they were gaining liberation by being killed. They were cursed to come down as human beings, and they just had to be here for a few moments, and Kansa was liberating them by doing this. So a pure devotee, when they act on the level of Narad Muni, and let's be very careful here, on the level of Narad Muni, whatever they do is all auspicious, because their only mindset is pure devotion. And sometimes externally it is unknown, but this is the definition. We cannot imitate that platform, but this is pure devotional service. Moksha Lagudakrit, pure bhakti, those in pure devotional service deride even the conception of liberation. Or Lagu means small. Lagudakrit means that bhakti makes liberation very small. Bhakti is like an ocean. When we have the ocean of devotion, liberation becomes like a little puddle that is made by the hoofprint of a calf. The water that is in that hoofprint is very minor when you're sitting next to the ocean. So it derides, it belittles, it makes small liberation. We all want liberation. We pray to God, please liberate me. But if we have bhakti, liberation will be nothing. So durlabha, pure devotional service, is rarely achieved. So it's not ordinary. Pure devotional service is extraordinary, very rarely achieved. Sandrananda Visheshatma. Pure devotional service automatically puts one in transcendental pleasure. The bliss of pure devotional service is millions of times greater than any other happiness that one can experience. And finally, the 6th one, Sri Krishna Karshani. Pure devotional service is so powerful that it attracts even the most powerful, who is Krishna. Pure devotional service is the only means to attract Krishna. What this means is that pure bhakti is even more powerful than Krishna, because it attracts Krishna, so therefore it's more powerful than Krishna. So there's nothing greater in this world than pure bhakti to Krishna. And we will talk about this more. So these 6 qualities, they manifest on different stages of our bhakti. So we haven't actually covered this so explicitly, but there's 3 major categories or stages in the progress of bhakti. The first stage is sadhana. This is the stage of regulated devotional service. Then bhava is bhakti in the stage of ecstasy, and prema is the bhakti in the stage of pure love of God in full ecstasy. So the first 2 characteristics of bhakti become prominent at the stage of sadhana, kleshagni and shubhada. On the stage of regulated devotional service, we will see that our devotional service frees us from material sufferings, and it is the beginning of all auspiciousness. It brings auspiciousness to us and everyone else. Then on the stage of bhava, we see that on that stage of ecstatic love, liberation becomes distasteful to us. And that stage of bhava is very rarely achieved. It's something that is so extraordinary. And finally, on the highest stage of prema, we feel a happiness and ecstasy that is so great that there's no happiness in this world that can compare. And that prema attracts Krishna. So therefore, on the stage of prema, this one, Sandrananda Visheshatma, very important stage. At the stage of prema, we can then never fall down. One can ask, there's always this risk of falling down from spiritual life. We read so many of the scriptures and we read about fall downs. So is it something we always have to be worried about? Something that will always be of anxiety or plague us continuously? No, at the stage of prema, we will never fall down. Why? Because once we reach that stage, Sandrananda Visheshatma, we are experiencing such a great happiness that there's no happiness in the material world that can attract us. Then we can never fall down. Theoretically speaking, we still can, but practically speaking, we never will. We always will have our free will. We can always turn away from Krishna like we did in the past and still make the wrong choice, theoretically speaking. But no, we will never do that because of having had our experience in material life, knowing what the limit of happiness is in this material world, and then experiencing Krishna's prema, that great unlimited happiness, we will never fall again. But until we reach that stage, we can fall down. So we have to be very careful. In the Bhagavatam, we find the example of Bharat Maharaj, right? Bharat Maharaj, who became a deer. And he was a pure devotee of the Lord. It's said that he left his kingdom, his material happiness, like one gives up stool after evacuating. So he was on the level of ecstatic love of Krishna, and all material things, including moksha, became very paltry for him, lagutakrit. So the scriptures say that he was actually on the platform of bhava. But because he was still on the platform of bhava, not prema, he still had the possibility of falling down. And he did experience a small fall down. He fell down for one lifetime as a deer, and then he very quickly after that reached the stage of prema and went back home, back to Godhead. So, even on the stage of bhava, one can fall. And remember, the stage of bhava is sudurlabha, very rarely achieved. So, even great devotees are on the stage of bhava. And even great devotees can fall down, they can slip. So, sometimes people get very surprised. How could someone of that stature fall down? Well, we should not be surprised because Bhaktivinoda Thakur says actually that it doesn't necessarily, but it can take a person millions of lifetimes to come from the stage of bhava to the stage of prema. It's not an easy thing. To come to bhava is sudurlabha, but what to speak to come to prema. So even within the greatness, even within the great devotees, there are very, very exalted devotees. On our level, they're all exalted, and we should see them that way. But why someone like Srila Prabhupada, who was a pure devotee, had such an amazing impact, and why another pure devotee is also a pure devotee, but does not have such a great impact? Well, because right now we cannot see the difference or know the difference between bhava and prema. But one devotee may be on the level of prema, another may be on the level of bhava. It's not our job to judge, but we can understand by the result. And we can also understand by characteristics of that devotion if someone is extremely empowered by Krishna. So just a key point here, very interesting point to note, that these are still stages, so to say, in which one can fall from the spiritual path. So the first one, kleshagni, this is now what we will focus on. Klesha means material suffering. Agni means fire. Kleshagni and gni just means destroys. So bhakti destroys material suffering. This is why the devotee does not engage in material philanthropic work, because the devotee knows that it is actually devotion to Krishna that destroys material suffering. So the devotee is the greatest philanthropist, and they do so by spreading God consciousness, by spreading devotional service, because that is the real thing that destroys material suffering. Pure devotional service brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. Prabhupada said this. He said, I have turned the hippies into happies. He immediately changed people's lives by engaging them in pure devotional service. There are three kinds of devotees. Those who are eternally on the transcendental platform, Nitya Siddha. Those who have been elevated to the transcendental platform by the execution of devotional service, Sadhana Siddha. And those who are neophytes advancing toward the perfectional platform, the sadhakas. The sadhakas are generally becoming free from fruitive reaction. So I think 2 classes ago, someone asked this question: what's the difference between, the Nitya Siddha, Sadhana Siddha, different types of devotees? So here Prabhupada is making it very clear. There's 3 kinds of devotees: Nitya Siddha, Sadhana Siddha, and the sadhakas. So the Kleshagni part is there for the sadhakas. Simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna once, a person is relieved from all the reactions of sinful life. So here Prabhupada, or the Chaitanya Charitamrita, is confirming that bhakti destroys all suffering. Why? Because even by chanting Krishna's name once, a person is relieved from sinful reactions, and it is due to sinful life that we are suffering. When a person circumambulates Srimati Tulsi Devi, all the sins he may have committed are destroyed at every step, even the sin of killing a Brahmana. But now the question is, we find quotes like this, where it clearly says that devotional service destroys all sinful life, all suffering, but then we also find quotes like this. A devotee should not expect immediate relief from the reactions of his past misdeeds. Prabhupada says that we do see devotees suffer, and the devotee cannot expect immediate relief from the reactions of past misdeeds. A devotee who is not perfectly freed from the resultant actions should therefore continue to act in Krishna consciousness seriously, even though there may be so many impediments. So here in these quotes, Prabhupada is saying that a devotee is not immediately or perfectly freed from the karmic reactions. The devotee may still suffer from what is it? The word that I'm looking for. A devotee may still suffer from when a person is anyway, I forget. So the word. So the devotee still has these things. Yeah. So you see, the devotee starts the practice of bhakti, but when they see a cigarette or an intoxicant, they're still suffering from that addiction. Yeah, addictions, right? Even though they're on the pure devotional platform, they did bhakti, but they're still suffering from these things. So how is bhakti destroyed? How has bhakti destroyed these addictions? which are due to sinful reactions or sinful life. And what we get into now is into a very intricate, a very deep um, analysis of material suffering. How does it come? How does it increase? So, so Prabhupada here is saying that a devotee still is a victim sometimes of past habits and misdeeds. Then again, there are statements like Krishna's statement, Sarvadharman parityaja mamekam sharanam raja, aham tvam sarva papebhya mokshashyami mashacha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. Statements that say that if a devotee surrenders to Krishna, Krishna delivers the devotee from all sinful reactions. So, how do we make sense of these conflicting statements? That is, statements like here that we find that say that a devotee is completely free of all material distress by engaging, or immediately freed from material suffering by engaging in devotional service, and other statements and our own experience that the devotee is still suffering from sinful reactions. So what do you think? What is the solution? How do we resolve these apparently contradictory statements in the scriptures?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Does it depend on the degree of our surrender? Like, we may not be at that stage where we have completely surrendered unto Krishna, which is why he is not able to deliver us from all sinful reactions.
It could, and it does depend on that. But at the same time, our own experience shows us that sometimes devotees that are very, very surrendered are often the times that undergo more distress. I've experienced this, that devotees who have like fully dedicated their life to Krishna, you know, they get into a car accident and or something, distress, or they're struggling. Sometimes they don't have enough to eat or this or that, and other devotees who are still keeping up the material life, they're doing fine. So in our own experience, there doesn't seem to be a correlation between the two.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yes.
Prabhu, but isn't that material distress? Krishna isn't saying that he will deliver them from any material distress. He'll deliver them from this material world. So if they're dying in a car accident, that means, and if they're going maybe back home to Godhead, or or someone who doesn't have to eat enough to eat, or is in material distress. That's the material distress, isn't it, Prabhu?
Yes, that is true what you're saying. Kleshagni means freeing from all material distress, like you're saying, all distress, which means material distress. In spiritual life, there's no distress, which is a result of one's past sinful reactions, right? So Kleshagni means that bhakti is freeing us from all sinful reactions. Um, so you're right that the devotee that is pure, that is doing pure bhakti, could be in an accident, but they don't feel distress. Even though they feel the pain, they don't feel distress because their mind is fixed on Krishna. Right? And I think that's your point, that there's still, though there is physical distress, there's still no distress.
Yeah, that's one example. The other example that you gave of someone not having enough to eat, or even other material needs, one may not have that, but Krishna is promising that he'll deliver them from all sinful reactions, and if they're in distress, that's material distress. So I think uh, I was under the impression that even if someone is in material distress here in the material world, and they're surrendered to Krishna, and ultimately their path to Godhead is sure, or they may succeed in it.
Yes. So you're making a very good point. Like it's said that Krishna, when he says about protection here, and it's also Krishna is protecting our soul, not necessarily our body.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that we're saying, that Krishna's protection and the freedom that he gives is from
Like
shield entanglement. So that is true. At the same time,
Prabhuji, I had one more point.
yes, go ahead.
Is it possible that Krishna gives these afflictions to increase to inspire the devotee further to get more and more attached to him, to Lord alone, and in a way remove all possible deviations of getting sucked up into this mirage of happiness in material world.
Mm. Mm. Yes, this is the other part of it. So Anandmaya Krishna Prabhu was saying one part of it. Now you are saying the other part of it, because sometimes what we, and this is I was going to mention, and you said it so well, so nicely, that sometimes we do feel, at least for ourselves also, we feel that I did get a reaction here. Like there's one devotee, he did something wrong and then he fell off of a ladder. Like he actually was going up a ladder and he fell off the ladder right after that, and he knew this is reaction. And it's hard to say that the devotee is free of all karma, even though here it's being promised that there is karma, that there is no karma for the devotee. So how do we make sense of this? Just like all of you have very beautifully said, Srila Prabhupada has extended Krishna's statements in the Bhagavad Gita to the spiritual master, who is Krishna's, this is not the answer, just another point here, who is Krishna's representative, that if you surrender to the spiritual master at the time of initiation, you become free from all sinful reactions. So many of you have gotten initiated just recently, and many of us got in the past, and many will be. So at the time of initiation, we are free of all sinful reactions. So sinful reactions should not be playing, or reactions to our past activities should not be playing a role in our present experience.
Prabhuji, I think Aruda Mataji had explained to us once that Krishna takes all those reactions, puts it in a bag, and for our path of purification, sometimes little by little he'll give what we need to become more serious or more purified. And also prarabdha karma is also there, right, Prabhuji? For some of us, the prarabdha karma is already there, the fructification is already taken, so some of that reaction will still suffer.
But yeah, in terms of your second point, that is the very point that Kleshagni makes, which I will see right after this now. Kleshagni means that it also burns prarabdha karma. It burns aprarabdha, prarabdha, all karma. And there's many different types. There's also even more subtle forms that we get into. But your first point is right on the dot. Right on the dot, Mataji. Here, it said, Srila Prabhupada has given some other hints which could help us resolve this question. This question that we have, which one is it? Is a devotee free or is he not free from past karma? He has said that when the devotee surrenders to Krishna, Krishna will take charge of the devotee's sinful reactions and use the devotee's sinful reactions for the benefit of the devotee.
Is it because of?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Is it because of the Vaishnava aparadha and Nam aparadha that may still be there?
That is a different thing, and that is aparadha will always be. Aparadha is always something until we come to the level of prema that we may get reaction for. But in terms of sinful life, so this is more in terms of past karma. Here, the answer is being given, which is also included in aparadha, like you're saying, aparadha is included in this. That well, no, it's not actually. This is separate. So in terms of our past sinful reactions, both things are completely true. The devotee, all of his karma is burnt. He has no more karma left. He will not suffer any sinful reactions from the past. But what Maharaj here is saying is that what Prabhupada is saying is that Krishna takes that, whatever past karma the devotee had, and will give it to the devotee, not out of karma, but because Krishna is personally giving that sinful reaction to the devotee for the benefit of the devotee, so that those past habits become rectified. Like long ago, you might remember I gave the example of the devotee who was a thief. Prior to his initiation, prior to becoming a devotee, he was a thief. And then after he became a devotee, he was robbed, very kind of heavily robbed. And when he was robbed, then he said that, now I understood how painful it is to be a thief. So once he became a devotee, all of his past karma was gone. So he was not suffering due to his past karma, but Krishna took that karma and he still gave it to the devotee, but he gave it in such a way that he came to the realization that my past habit of stealing is not good. I have to give it up completely. So, so this is Srila Prabhupada's answer, how we resolve these conflicting statements. Devotees will suffer. Devotees do suffer, and they suffer a lot at times. But that suffering is not due to their karma. Their suffering is due to Krishna trying to rectify them in a certain way. And that suffering is of a very different nature. And that goes back to Anandamaya Prabhu's point, that the devotee is suffering, but it'll still come in a way that somehow the devotee can appreciate the value in it. It's not senseless suffering for the devotee.
And also he also lessens the suffering, right, Prabhu? He'll, instead of yeah.
But yeah. No, yeah, he definitely does. But yeah,
for his sincere devotees, he just makes it a fraction of it.
Yes. As far as what we can see, I mean, as far as what we understand, he does. At times, devotees, they go through unimaginable amount of suffering, and one. We don't know how Krishna has reduced it for the devotee, but yeah, he has in some way or the other. But even if he does not, the point is he's doing it what is best for the devotee. Like if the devotee has to experience the full thing, the devotee may experience it, but generally he does reduce it. This is directly given by Krishna. The last point that I want to make is that Vaishnava Aparadh is slightly different in the sense that when we are offending devotees presently, then that is the direct reaction of that offense. Here, my understanding is that what Krishna is speaking of is our past sinful activities of previous lifetimes, and also our sinful activities prior in this life, prior to becoming a devotee. Those things, Krishna completely forgives them. They're all burnt by the mercy of the spiritual master. But Krishna still, arranges those in a certain way so that we never make those mistakes again. Because he does need a way of teaching us. So they're not reactions, but rather they're more like teaching tools. A few more points and then I will have time for more discussion. Because in his mind, a devotee may still maintain the remnants of his previous sinful mentality, the Lord removes the last vestiges of the enjoying spirit by giving his devotee punishments that may sometimes resemble sinful reactions. Although a devotee has surrendered to the Lord's devotional service until he is completely perfect in Krishna consciousness, he may maintain a slight inclination to enjoy the false happiness of this world. Right? So after we become a devotee, we may still enjoy or still have the inclination of enjoying positions of power, let's say, or enjoying power and position, honor, all these things. So Krishna may put us in a position like that and make it very distasteful for us, so that we, in the future, this is my own personal experience, so in the future we don't seek those positions. We only seek the unalloyed service of the Lord, and we take those positions only as a service to Krishna, not to gratify our own senses. So in general, devotees' sufferings are more subtle on this level, where Krishna is trying to mold the consciousness So we look for the right things, not this and we can burn off this slight inclination to enjoy the false happiness of this world. Prabhupada says, the Lord therefore creates a particular situation to eradicate this remaining enjoying spirit. Krishna will arrange a certain situation, so perfectly arranged, to eradicate this remaining enjoying spirit. The unhappiness suffered by a sincere devotee is not technically a karmic reaction. It is rather the Lord's special mercy for inducing his devotee to completely let go of the material world and return home back to Godhead. So we have to do this. Therefore, this famous verse in the Bhagavatam, Tatenukampam shushamikshmano punjana yevatma kritam vipakam hridvagvapurbhir vidadhan namaste jivetayo mukti pade sadaya bhak. My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds, and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. So the Bhagavatam almost predicts this. It says that once we become a devotee, we will suffer so much. And these are the reactions of our past misdeeds. Like we said, not due to karma, but due to the mercy of the Lord. And if we take those reactions as the mercy of the Lord, patiently waiting for them to go through, to to manifest and take their course, so to say, all the while offering obeisances to the Lord, improving ourselves, becoming more attached to the Lord, then liberation becomes our rightful claim. Then another verse that goes along this one in the Bhagavatam, Shri Bhagavan Vacha, Yasyaham Anugrami Harishye Tadhanam Shanai Tato Dhanam Tyajatyasya Svajana Dukkha Dukkhita. The personality of God had said, if I especially favor someone, I gradually deprive him of his wealth. Then the relatives and friends of such a poverty-stricken man abandon him. In this way, he suffers one distress after another. So therefore, in spiritual life, we have to be very careful. Sometimes we see a devotee and, we just see they have one problem after another, or especially, their family situation, their friends or relatives abandon them, or they have some distressful situation. So externally, it may seem that they're not very advanced devotees. We may judge them and say, oh, see, they weren't even able to keep their family together. What type of a devotee is he? But Krishna here is saying, when I especially favor someone, these problems can come. Why? Because we may be attached in a material way to our family. We may be attached in a material way to our business or all these things. And Krishna may deprive that person of these things just to make that person fully surrendered. So that person may actually be a very advanced devotee. And if we offend them, we'll do Vaishnava Parad. That person who is apparently not doing so well may actually be a very advanced devotee, because the special mercy of the Lord is being bestowed upon that person. So we don't know how Krishna is acting in the lives of devotees. A devotee who externally is not very advanced may internally be very advanced. So I'm going to skip a little forward here and now come to this, come to the analysis, the very scientific analysis.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
Sorry, Prabhu. One quick question. So I missed it at the last. Now, if you go back 2 slides, Prabhu, if you can, please.
Yes.
One more, Prabhu. Actually, a couple of them. Sorry. The one, yes, Prabhu, this one. Actually, the one before this, sorry. Yes, Prabhu. Now, for the pure devotees of the Lord, now in a scripture like the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is of utmost importance to us Vaishnavas, even here, Prabhu, it is talking about liberation for pure devotees. And the pure, and so again, this goes back to the same thing that you were discussing a little earlier, contradictory statements. So here, we're talking about the liberation of pure devotees, but pure devotees actually don't care about the liberation at all, isn't it? I mean, they are in the mood of prema, and they want to come back again and again and again and again, only to serve the Lord. So, what do you have to say about it?
Yes. So here, mukti is being used in a different context, and there mukti is being used in a different context. There, moksha lagutakrit means impersonal liberation. It becomes paltry, or just liberation from material distress becomes paltry. But here, mukti is referring to, it is referring to the stage of bhakti. It's referring to the association of the Lord, service to the Lord. So
Nisha, no. Can you have him do something? Don't worry about him. Give this to me. So Hato and
okay, so
On that point, Prabhuji, if I can just say a quick point.
Sure. And then we'll move forward.
That was exactly the question that was asked by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in his conversation with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on that very verse. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is described as a whole section in the conversation between Lord Chaitanya and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. When Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was reciting this particular verse, he converted Mukti Pada to Bhakti Pada. He recited it as Bhakti Pada Daya Bhag.
Yes.
And Lord Chaitanya pointed out, you're not reciting correctly. And then he said, I don't like this mukti. I want that's therefore I myself replaced it with bhakti. And then Lord Chaitanya explained him, just like you said, this mukti is different. And there's very nice purport there by Srila Prabhupada on this verse, how this mukti is actually referring to bhakti.
Very beautiful point. Thank you for reminding us of that. It's actually a fact, like you're saying, this very same question has been discussed in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So this mukti refers to bhakti. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's three causes of suffering. So now we get very scientifically into this. How does bhakti burn suffering? Well, there's three causes of suffering. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu says, next verse 1118, Kleshastu papam tad bijam avidya cheti te tridha. The three causes are papam, sinful actions, we know that. But then even more deeper are bijam. What are sinful actions caused by? They're caused by bijam, which is material desires, sinful desires. And the third is avidya, or ignorance, the root cause. So ignorance or avidya causes material desires, which cause sinful actions, which lead to klesha or suffering. These are the three causes of suffering. So regarding avidya, bhakti destroys ignorance. So now we'll see how bhakti destroys all three causes of suffering. There are many, many snakes on the ground of the forest, and when a fire takes place, it burns the dried foliage and the snakes are immediately attacked. Similarly, the blazing fire of Krishna consciousness is so strong that the snakes of ignorance are immediately killed. So bhakti destroys ignorance. Vidya vadhu jivanam. Right? Bhakti is vidya vadhu jivanam. Chanting of the holy names brings knowledge. Ignorance is destroyed. Very famous verse from the Bhagavatam. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayati Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yadhaitukam. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. So the result of serving the Vaishnavas and serving Krishna is we get knowledge and detachment. Then the second cause of suffering is bijam, or material desires. Although one may neutralize the reactions of sinful life through austerity, charity, vows, and other such methods, these pious activities cannot uproot the material desires in one's heart. However, if one serves the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, he is immediately freed from all such contaminations. Why is this? Because we said um, that how bhakti is Sandhyananda Visheshatma. It is brings such great pleasure, such happiness in the heart, that it uproots the desire for other happiness. We experience a higher taste because bhakti is hrishikena hrishikesha. When the senses get a higher taste, then it uproots the desire for the lower taste. So material desires, the bhaktas, by their transcendental devotional service unto the lotus feet of the Lord, become so overwhelmed with transcendental bliss that automatically their desires for material enjoyment stop. Desires for fruitive activities are strongly rooted, but the trees of desire can be uprooted completely by devotional service, because devotional service employs superior desire. See, only lower desire can be changed by superior desire. Now we were talking about aprarabdha and prarabdha. So the third cause of klesha is papa, or sinful reactions, and there are two kinds of sinful reactions. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu explains 119, aprarabdham bhavet papam prarabdham cheti tadvidha. Aprarabdham means immature or unmanifest. These are unmanifest sinful reactions. And these are reactions that are there, but they have not manifest. Prarabdha reactions are mature or manifested reactions. So let's say if I'm smoking a cigarette, the mature or manifest reaction is the bad breath that it causes. Right? The immature, unmanifest reaction is the lung cancer that it may cause down the road. Right? So both are sinful reactions, but one is manifest and one is unmanifest. Bhakti destroys both of them. Sinful activities are of two kinds, those that are mature and those which are not. The sinful activities for which we are suffering at the present moment are called mature. The many sinful activities stored within us, for which we have not yet suffered, are considered immature. Even a person born in the family of dog eaters immediately becomes eligible to perform Vedic sacrifices if he once utters the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or chants about him, hears about his pastimes, offers him obeisances, or even remembers him. So the Bhagavatam here is now confirming that bhakti destroys all these aprarabdha and prarabdha reactions. Similarly, Prabhupada says, one who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and devotional service has without doubt become freed from all contaminations of material sinful activities. Devotional service, therefore, has the power to actually nullify all kinds of reactions to sinful deeds. Now, one final point, and this is the point kind of I've been leading to that is very important here, is being made here. Aprarabdha phalam papam kutam bijam phalonmukham kramenaiva praliyeta Vishnu bhakti ratatmanam. It is stated in the Padma Puran that there are 4 kinds of effects due to sinful activities. All these 4 effects become immediately vanquished for those who surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu and become engaged in his devotional service in full Krishna consciousness. And what are these 4 effects? So from papam or sinful actions, we get aprarabdha reaction and we get prarabdha reaction, right? We said these 2. But now this aprarabdha reaction, one of the ways it manifests is called kutam. And I want to explain this because this is very key in our understanding of sinful reactions and distress, material distress, which it leads to. So I gave the example of how aprarabdha is a reaction, like if I'm smoking a cigarette, I may get lung cancer later on, right? It's an unmanifest reaction that will manifest in due course of time. Well, one of the unmanifest reactions that we have, which is aprarabdha karma, is that it will lead to, one of the reactions of sinful activity is that it will lead to the proclivity of engaging in that sinful activity more and more. So going back to our example of smoking the cigarette, the manifest reaction is a bad breath, right? Okay, that's the smoke coming from all these things. The unmanifest reaction
More than 2 minutes. I'm not done video.
There's something going on. So some kids playing with the phone. So one of the unmanifest reactions is the lung cancer, but another unmanifest reaction of intoxication is what? What is it? It is the desire to engage in it more. It is the addiction. The addiction increases. The desire to engage in that activity more increases. And that is true. It is obvious in this example, but that is true of any material life. So we may say, I have this material desire, and therefore to give up that desire, I'm going to fulfill it. But if we do so in an unregulated way, that material activity will actually create a desire to engage in it even more. It will further increase our desire to engage in that material activity. And therefore, if we understand the science of how sinful activities work, then we'll be able to break the cycle. Because we'll be able to understand that no, I cannot satisfy it by fulfilling it. Because quote unquote, I'm fulfilling it. But actually in fulfilling it, I'm increasing the desire even more. And when I read this, this was like a game changer for me. Because you think, oh, I just have this one desire, I just have this one desire. I want to go and watch this one movie. And if I do so, then I can be peaceful in my Krishna consciousness. But what happens? You watch the movie, and at the end of the movie, there's a commercial for another movie, which is a little worse than the one that we watched. And then we go and we watch that one, and then we watch that one. And we all know this now because this is called YouTube addiction. This is called internet addiction. This is exactly what you say. I'm just going to watch this one YouTube. Oh, it's so funny. This little doggy is doing something. But then once it ends and these little things pop up, these little boxes pop up, and on that one, there's something. And that's, that's not about a little dog. That's about a woman doing something lusty or something like this. Then we have to click on that. And then there's something else that pops up. And this unmanifest reaction, which is the proclivity to engage in that sinful activity more. All the advertising agencies have perfected that. All the, Google and YouTube, which is the same company, they perfected it. They know that this is how it works. This is how our mindset works. Even modern psychologists have figured this out. and the scriptures knew it long time ago. So then they pull you in, and then all of a sudden you're addicted. You're addicted. They say that it's so sad. They say that I think something like 70%, no, 60%. I just read this recently. I have a thing of all 12 to 18-year-olds in this country say that they have a porn addiction. This is 60% of all youth in this country. Under the age of 18, 12 to 18 say that they have a pornography addiction. And I will tell you that many of these youth are devotee youth. Their parents don't know it, but their children are watching pornography. And this creates further desires to engage in further things. This is why we're not against anything. It's a science. We can figure out. I mean, there's no fanaticism here. This is why television, internet, these things are so bad, because part of the unmanifest reaction is the desire to further engage in it, and that's the biggest form of the reaction. When people steal, that's a wonderful example. When people steal, then the biggest part of the reaction of that is the desire to do it more, to then become a professional thief. It's not just the reaction that you go to jail or you are living in fear, but it's you get a proclivity, a taste to doing it more. So it goes from the unmanifest reaction to the proclivity. The kutam means the sinful proclivity, to bijam, which is the material desire, which is then the prarabdha, which is the manifest reaction. So going back to this, there are three causes of suffering: avidya, ignorance; bijam, material desires; and papam, which is sinful reactions. And there's two parts to sinful reactions. We said unmanifest and manifest. The unmanifest includes the sinful proclivities. Prabhupada says in chapter 1, which you are going to read, material contamination is very subtle. Its beginning, its fruition and results, and how one suffers such results is the form of distress, are part of a great chain. When one catches some disease, it is often very difficult to ascertain the cause of the disease. The practical injection or cure to stop all the fructifications of the seeds of our sinful activities is simply engagement in Krishna consciousness. This sinful desire seed can be removed only by achieving Krishna consciousness, and this can be accomplished very easily by chanting the Maha Mantra or Hare Krishna mantra as recommended by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In other words, unless one adopts the path of devotional service, he cannot be 100% clean from all the sinful reactions or activities. Okay, and now I'm going to show you just one diagram, which I really want to show you. And then we have a little time for questions and answers. It's here. Where is it? It's not here. I'm sorry. Here. It's in here. Here we go. Okay. Okay. So this is the, okay, I'll stop share. And then, okay, does everyone see the diagram? Okay. So this is the cycle of suffering. This is the cycle. It starts with avidya. It goes to bijam, and this is in your Waves of Devotion study guide that I gave to all of you on WhatsApp. It's there. The handout that I gave, I'll give it again this time, but I gave for your introduction homework. So avidya, ignorance, leads to a sinful desire. A sinful desire, so we don't know what we're doing, we do the wrong thing, it leads to sinful desire. Then sinful desire leads to sinful action, which is papa. We do then the wrong thing. After desiring it, we do it. Then that sinful action leads to an unmanifest reaction. The first reaction is unmanifest. That unmanifest reaction becomes manifest as prarabdha. It takes two forms. One, the unmanifest becomes manifest, so that's prarabdha reaction. And the unmanifest reaction also leads to kutam, which is sinful disposition, which leads to further sinful desires, bigger sinful desires, which lead to sinful action, which leads to further unmanifest reaction. This unmanifest reaction being even more, which leads to more sinful disposition, which means more sinful desire, and like this it gets worse and worse. And then every time round, the manifest reaction becomes greater, and then there's more and more suffering. So this is how mature life ties us in, pulls us in, and it brings us to deeper and deeper levels of mature suffering. And the root of all of it is avidya, or ignorance. Therefore, we should try to get knowledge. Now, someone will say, well, I didn't have knowledge. That's why I did the wrong thing. How is it my fault? But Prabhupada explains that ignorance is no excuse. We are in ignorance because we are choosing ignorance. That's where free will comes. Everyone has a choice to follow the path of knowledge or not, to some degree or the other. And so the ignorance is our choice. Ignorance is no excuse. We must come to the path of knowledge. That is the solution for our ignorance. And these are other diagrams that show the same thing, but in a little more non-circular way. So you have the papa, the sinful reaction, the sinful activity that leads to the reaction. One part of it becomes manifest. The other part, the unmanifest, leads to sinful proclivity, which is the kutam, which is the sinful desire. And like this, the cycle goes on. Okay, so any questions? Now we can have a little bit of discussion. And first, we'll start with questions of people who have not spoken until now. So, Brandy, I think you're first. You're muted.
Okay, Hare Krishna. It's okay. I was just saying one moment. I was in the middle of something. Sorry. I just wanted to share not a question, but a statement. So it was on the topic of whenever we were talking about karma, Prabhu and Mataji were giving statements, but my connection went out, so I'd missed part of the conversation. But I wanted to share my personal realizations, and that going through my own like personal sufferings and reactions, reflecting, trying to see what my karmic reactions are. I've realized that I just had to have faith in Krishna, that he doesn't want to hurt me. And once I just put it simply like that in my mind, it made so much more sense, because why would he ever want to hurt his devotees or anybody, actually? So I feel that what separates Krishna consciousness from other religious philosophies or even just life philosophies is that he takes your situation, he takes your karma, and he gives you a purpose for it, and almost kind of like a reward in a way, which is some say you might not deserve that sometimes, but that's just how compassionate he is. So yeah, that was just my realization. He gives you the intelligence too to understand this, versus other people who are just asking like, why me, and where is this coming from? I'm such a good person, so thank you.
Very nice point, very nice comment. The only thing I may add to that is that most of the time Krishna gives us the intelligence to understand, why am I suffering, what am I learning from this? But sometimes, and this is as we advance and to advance devotees, sometimes Krishna does not reveal to us or give us the intelligence on why we are suffering. And the example of that is Maharaj Yudhishthir. who never did, no any sinful reaction, that he could not understand why such horrible suffering Krishna put the Pandavas through. And it's in situations like that that our faith really gets really tested, and where these verses from the Bhagavatam that we read, Tatyenu Kampam Shishamikshamano, where it is only our faith and our determination that carries us through. Because we're very fortunate when we do see that, oh, there's a higher purpose in this, and we know that Krishna loves us, and this is how he's exhibiting our love to us. But sometimes, as Lord Chaitanya says, it actually does feel like Krishna is neglecting us. Krishna doesn't love us, or the suffering makes no sense to the devotee. And those are very difficult sufferings, not the easy ones, but the very difficult sufferings to go through. And there these verses very come in handy, where can we keep our faith during those times? And the greatness of a devotee is seen by if they are able to survive those tests, where Krishna is giving them a suffering that they cannot understand the reason for, yet they are still devoted to Krishna. And Prabhupada actually mentions this, or some devotees have mentioned that each one of us in our spiritual life, we will go through this stage at one point, where it will be such a smashing from Krishna that we'll only have two ways to go. One is to surrender to Krishna, or the other is to leave the process. And if we can somehow get through that stage and surrender to Krishna even more, rather than leave the movement or leave Krishna consciousness or leave the process of bhakti, then the next shower is a shower of sweet bhakti, Krishna's mercy. But so it's easy, but it's also not easy. It's sublime, but it's also very testing.
Can I also just briefly add that I think that is also part of the compassion, though, because some things are just too much to bear, So, I mean, I've had many things happen to me where I didn't want to ask why. Like, that didn't feel like a useful question sometimes, versus just, okay, this happened, how do I move on? And I think that's, at least when you know Krishna, at least you understand he has a hand, his hand is there. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. Champakalata Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for such an enlivening and interactive class. I have a question, Prabhu. All this aprarabdha and prarabdha and kutam and bijam, does it applies to pure devotees also? Or are we talking this at a sadhaka level?
So as you mentioned, bhakti destroys these things. So in other words, this is, bhakti destroys the sinful reactions, aprarabdha, prarabdha, like you're saying, before we become a devotee. So this takes place on the sadhaka level, but it's true for all levels. But it takes place. So like I showed you that diagram, kleshagni and shubhada, auspiciousness, these were of the first two stages, right? So these were of the first two, of the first stage of sadhana. Here, I'll share this screen again, just so you can see this. So they take, these characteristics are most manifest at this stage, but they're true of all devotees, that Krishna destroys any sinful reactions here. So the first two, Shubhada and Kleshagni, take place at the stage of sadhana. Now, prema includes all of these things, but the point is that sadhana, on the stage of sadhana, we are not Sri Krishna Karshini. But on the stage of prema, we are Kleshagni. Also, all of our material distress is gone. So on the stage of sadhana, these two things happen, then this happens, and this happens. And by prema, all of this has happened. All six characteristics of bhakti have exhibited themselves. You're muted, Mataji.
Very much. Thank you so much, Prabhu. I really appreciate your explanation. Can I ask a real quick question, Prabhu?
Yes.
Prabhu, so at the level of like we see sometime in our movement also sadhus suffer, and like how you explained so beautifully that the sinful reactions does not come in form of like a karma, but Krishna gives in order to realize. But then I see so many sadhus suffering in our movement, and of course our limited understanding is that's material suffering, but not the spiritual suffering. Would you explain that? Like, is it even connected? No, in terms of sadhus, we wouldn't speak this way, right? Like that they also Krishna is doing to realize. No, because they are. If you can just throw a little light on that.
So in the case of sadhus, the material suffering becomes a spiritual suffering. So it is, I mean, it is, you could say, there is material problems, so to say, and they're not completely on the platform of prema, not all of them. So there are tinges of material desires and attachments, and therefore there's material suffering. But that material suffering, as we were discussing, after the time of initiation, that's being given by Krishna for our spiritual welfare, so that we can become purified of these attachments, these addictions, these designations, these problems. And so Krishna gives that material suffering as a way of making us spiritually enlightened. So that's material suffering becomes spiritual. It becomes part of the spiritual path of bhakti. It becomes a tool for bhakti, for our advancement. So therefore, it is really not material in nature. It does not retain the material aspects of it. It doesn't lead to more kutam. It doesn't lead to more sinful desire, but rather that material suffering is a way of destroying our material desires. That material suffering removes our material desires.
So is it same in case of sadhus also, Prabhu?
No, it is only in the case of sadhus like this. For non-sadhus, they're just, action, reaction. They're doing an action and they're suffering the reaction. And then in the course of suffering the reaction, sometimes their desires even increase more. They really start to want material life. But in the case of devotees, that reaction is a medicinal balm. Like Prabhupada is saying, it's that injection that cures the devotee of those subtle material desires and attachments. Therefore, Krishna allows that difficult life. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in fact, he said that a devotee will find his path of spiritual life laden with thorns. More so, the path of bhakti is laden with thorns, even more so than a material life or a material path. Why? Because Krishna is testing the devotee. Krishna has a big task on hand. He has to purify this black heart and make it golden. And that's not an easy thing to do. So we should actually expect it that in the life of a sadhu, there will be great difficulties. It's said that the materialistic man is happy, the pure devotee is happy. But it is the sadhaka or the person who's trying to become a pure devotee who is unhappy. Of course, the material person is also unhappy. He just doesn't realize it. It's due to his intoxication, his material illusion that he thinks he's happy. But to come to the platform of pure happiness, ultimate, unlimited, perfect happiness, the path is very difficult.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Pushpanjali Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Prabhuji, I have a doubt about Bijam. The first time when you said the three causes of suffering, you said Bijam is material desires, and in the diagram, Bijam is sinful desire. So I didn't understand, like material desire, I think like if you have desire for earning more money, but I mean, is that sinful?
Very nice question, Mataji. I'm glad you raised this. According to Srila Prabhupada, any desire other than serving the Lord, other than pleasing Krishna, any desire that is not meant for pleasing Krishna is a sinful desire. So we may think, oh, it's something so innocent. My desire is that my child should become, a PhD graduate. But if that desire is not for the service of Krishna, that my child becomes educated so that they can serve Krishna, so they can preach But if it's a desire, oh, let my child become educated so I will be happy or my son will be happy, then that is a sinful desire, because we are wanting to enjoy what does not belong to us. This material does not belong to us. We're trying to enjoy that, and therefore we are, we're we're being greedy, or so to say. We are still within lust, anger, and greed. That cycle.
Thank you so much. Very heavy, Prabhu. Thank you for explaining.
Thank you for the question. Very nice question. Ambika Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Danvat Pranam. Thank you for the wonderful class. So I just wanted to, it's like a clarification that all of this that we discussed, the chapter of the title is Pure Devotional Service. So I think, this is all whatever we did, all the, we said, bhakti is going to, bhakti is going to destroy these three kleshas. But that's not just bhakti, it's a pure devotional service, right? So we are referring everything, whatever we referred, it's pure devotional service. It's not just any and what is pure devotional service? It's, that's what we read in the first verse, anukalyena krishnanu. So it's favorable to Krishna, it's done constantly. And I think, I can speak for myself, even though I'm saying that I'm doing devotional service, but it's not, obviously it's nowhere near to pure devotional service. So, anything that is here, we discuss all these kleshas and sinful reactions, this is all going, I have to suffer for it because I'm not doing pure devotional service. I'm nowhere close to pure devotional service.
So you're raising a very nice point. So this is a matter of discussion, actually, um, because pure devotional service completely eradicates material distress, kleshagni. So when we're on the level of pure devotional service, we will have no material distress. But devotional service, to the degree that we are doing pure devotional service, so to the degree that we are doing devotional service, devotional service does decrease material distress. So, it is not a sudden change. To the degree that our devotional service becomes pure, to that degree our material distress is gone. Like Krishna says in the Gita, Susukum kartam avyayam, that this practice of bhakti is joyfully performed. Now, we're not doing pure devotional service, but we may still experience great joy in our bhakti at times. So that is showing that we are on the path. We are performing devotional service, and not, although it's not fully purified, it's getting there, and so we're on the path. And secondly, the point you made, very important point that I was going to highlight here, that Prabhupada does say that at the time of initiation, Krishna burns away all of our past sinful reactions. And at the time of initiation, most of us are not on the platform of pure devotional service. So, this platform of kleshagni does manifest as we surrender to Krishna. But as I mentioned, it's only when we are fully on the platform of pure devotional service that all of our kleshagni, all these material distress goes away. So the Pandavas, now going back to their example, the Pandavas, they were undergoing so much distress, but at the same time, they were feeling transcendental ecstasy. They were not suffering because they were on the platform of pure devotional service. Why? Because they're fully on the platform of kleshagni. In our case, like the Pandavas, we are also undergoing distress, but we're not suffering as much as a materialist, nor are we on the platform of the Pandavas, where we don't really care for that suffering at all. So we're somewhere in the middle. So it's a gradual process.
Right, right. Thank you, Prabhuji. And I was just thinking, you put it in such a nice way that, we are not like materialistic who is completely suffering. And we are not like pure devotees like Pandava or, like some spiritual spiritual masters and all of that, but I think we are all at the different level. And I guess this is what, that's where devotee association comes. It's like, like ants, they hold each other ants, and they, kind of drag them. So I think, the more we hold the hands of devotees, I think, they are going to pull us out from this material distress. So I think, thank you for explaining that.
Yes, no, and that's a very nice point also, that in their shadow, the devotee's shadow, our material distress also decreases, because yeah, because of their pure devotion.
Right, right. So Prabhuji, we are still on that same point, and I think we quickly moved over from the slide about sadhaka, sadhana, siddha, and nitya siddhas. So obviously, nitya siddhas, we know who are nitya siddhas. So I don't need explanation, but I want to get some more clarification about sadhaka and sadhana siddha. And I guess most of us, especially I'm talking about myself, on a sadhaka stage, but who are sadhana siddhas? Can we just discuss that in a little bit detail?
Yes. So sadhana siddhas are those who have perfected their sadhana. So once perfected their sadhana, or once they get liberation, then they become sadhana siddhas, meaning that through the regulated practice of devotional service, they have perfected themselves. Now, before they become siddha, as we will see in the nectar devotion, they'll go from sadhana to raganuga to bhava to prema, and then they become sadhana siddha. But the point is that the path that they took to that point was through sadhana. Whereas those who are nitya siddhas, they were always liberated. Their path to becoming siddha was that they were always liberated. And there's a third category, which is kripa siddha, which is devotees who become siddha not because of their effort of sadhana, but because Lord Chaitanya, for example, embraced them. Or like Lord Chaitanya embraces the animals in the Jarikanda forest. So they did not have to work hard for it. They just, out of the kripa, the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, they got liberation. Now we are sadhana we are sadhakas and hoping to be sadhana siddhas. But on the other hand, Prabhupada has said in some places that we are also, once we get liberation, also kripa siddhas. Because we come siddha through our sadhana, but also in this day and age especially, it's only because of the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and the devotees that we get siddha. We make some effort, but 90% they do through their mercy. And that siddha stage is the stage of pure bhakti. Kripa siddha, we are generally a combination of kripa siddha and sadhana siddha.
So Prabhuji, still I think it's not clear to me. So we're sadhaka, and we, by following the regulative principles, we can become sadhana siddha, but we are still not, we cannot call ourselves as a sadhana siddha. I think, maybe can I just say that maybe can we take an example of Prabhupada, then we can call him as a sadhana siddha or his nitya siddha?
So someone like Prabhupada, definitely nitya siddha, because his exhibition of sadhana was just lila. Because from the scriptures we know that he came from the spiritual world to help us. So he did not become sadhana siddha. He was always siddha. But someone like Narad Muni, for example, can be called the Narad Muni described in the Bhagavatam is sadhana siddha, because he became perfected by the process of sadhana. But at the same time, he's also kripa siddha. By the mercy of the sages there, he says he gets the mercy of Krishna. So there's no sadhana without kripa. So kripa siddha means someone who just only because of kripa, they became siddha. Like Krishna can do anything he wants, and once in a while he just wants to give someone pure love, and he does. And he said, "Oh, I wish I was that person. Wouldn't have to work so hard for this." But um, uh, some people, Krishna is independent. We cannot demand that from Krishna. Some people win the lottery, some don't, but we cannot depend on winning the lottery, right?
So it's kind of, a different perspective. I wasn't thinking about that, that Prabhupada, definitely is nitya siddha, and Narad Muni is kind of considered sadhana siddha. I wasn't sure about that. So thank you for explaining with the examples. So we can, I think, somehow, or maybe, when we are probably doing the pure devotional service, we are quote unquote sometimes, call ourselves, or people can consider us as a sadhana siddha or kripa siddha.
Well, that's a far cry, right? I mean, once we are siddha, then people will say sadhana slash kripa siddha. But yes, right now, yeah. So I mean, but once we're in the spiritual world, it doesn't matter how we got there, right? But yeah, that's how people.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Nice. Kishore Prabhu, I think you're next.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandatam.
Thank you.
Wonderful class, Prabhu. No, I think you are talking about like ignorance. We do sinful, get the sinful desires, and the sinful desires we do sinful actions. But in my case, like I did a few years back, I did some offensive talk to some Vaishnava devotee. So and the same day or next day, I think I had a cut in my hand, in the kitchen. I suffered for a couple of months. I don't know, like, is that just related to the incident, in my opinion? I didn't have any desire to do any sinful action, but it happened. Is it like I don't know, like, is it called, is it sinful desire, or like is it called a sinful action? I didn't I didn't have any desire. No, it happened.
Unknowingly, right? So see, this is where the avidya part comes. That avidya means lack of knowledge, right? So you said you have no desire, but still now you know. Before you did not know, right?
Yeah.
Now you have the knowledge before you did. So because you did not know, that reaction is reduced. So if you knowingly did it and intentionally planned it, the reaction will be much greater. If you unknowingly, if we offend a devotee, like you're saying, still it's no excuse. Prabhupada, as I mentioned, he says ignorance is no excuse, because we had the option of knowing, right? We had the option of reading more and doing more. So we did not know. That is our responsibility. But because we did not know, Krishna does reduce the reaction. Because it's based on our intention. Like you're saying, it was an innocent thing. I did not know. Now, of course, sometimes Krishna coincides things. So we don't know, was your cut because of that offense, or was it maybe because of something else also?
Yeah.
Krishna can combine many things. So it's kind of like, oh, to scare us, or remind us, shock us that, oh, don't offend devotees. Krishna places another sinful reaction of a past at that point. To like they say, it's not a good saying, but they say to kill two birds with one stone, right? To teach us two lessons in one shot, or to just make us careful for future. And like you're describing your story, I've experienced myself, so many other devotees also. This happens all the time. This story I gave you of the ladder, this devotee falling off the ladder, this was a similar situation. The devotee insulted another devotee, and it was such a, like, Krishna is so funny. This goes back to Brandy's point about his compassion and mercy, how even the scenario in which the reaction came was so unique, because he's climbing a ladder and then he falls off the ladder. So Krishna's like showing almost like, this is the ladder of bhakti that you're climbing up on, and you're going to fall off this ladder, or you're going to lose a lot of steps. A lot of your work is going to go in vain if you offend my devotees, right? Because it's the steps, we're going up the steps, and he's like, he lost the steps, fell off the ladder. So Krishna has a sense of humor also, and sometimes he will give us reactions in ways that is like, oh my God, this too good to be false.
Yeah. So one more thing, Guru, like in our devotee communication, maybe you have some problem with some devotee, like maybe the way they treat you, or compared to other devotees. Even though you're trying to be nice, but they don't they don't respond to you the same way. There is no desire to harm them, or there is desire to dismean them, or put like that. But how, like, do we still get this? Maybe sometimes, maybe artfully, we don't respond, like there is no desire, but sometimes like you don't feel you don't say Hare Krishna. I mean, they say even they don't say Hare Krishna.
Yes. So what to do? Yeah, no, this is a very nice point, because um, there's one story about, I think, Rupa Goswami, where one time he was in deep meditation, and he was watching the pastimes of Krishna in his meditation. And Krishna did something funny in that meditation that Rupa Goswami was in. And so Rupa Goswami started laughing. And at that point, that just so happens at that very point, one devotee with a hunchback was walking across his ashram.
Mhm.
And Rupa Goswami was laughing in a state of ecstasy. And this devotee thought that Rupa Goswami was laughing at him because he had a hunchback. And he was kind of sensitive, oversensitive of his hunchback. And because, even though there was no offense, but because that devotee was a devotee, and the devotee felt offended, Rupa Goswami's meditation broke, and he could not see Krishna's pastimes anymore. And when he broke, Rupa Goswami thought, how has this happened? How is this possible that my meditation of Krishna is broken? And then he could understand that he offended some devotee, and therefore it happened. Now, he did not do it intentionally, he did not do it knowingly. He was just laughing, it was his nature. But still, because the other devotee is feeling offended, he could not see Krishna's pastimes. So then he finds that devotee and he clarifies the situation, and then he goes into his meditation again. So the unfortunate reality is that even if it's not intentional, it's not knowable, it just has to do with personalities. If a devotee does feel offended by us, we do get some form of reaction, like in the case of Rupa Goswami. And he obviously was doing this pastime to teach us that knowingly or unknowingly, we have to be very careful. Now, we may say, well, but there'll always be a situation when someone will be offended with me. So will I never see Krishna's pastimes? Will I never make advancement in spiritual life? The principle is there. You see, Krishna is not an unreasonable person, and we cannot, anything we can take it too far. So we don't want to take it too far. The principle is that we are very sensitive. So sensitive meaning a devotee is very subtle. Materialist is very gross. But the devotee's mood is very, very intelligent, very subtle, like very, like this. So a devotee tries his best. That's the point. The devotee tries his best, and sometimes the best we can do is just to avoid this situation. So this devotee feels offended by me, so I can avoid this situation, or I can adjust the situation, or I can just be nice to the devotee rather than solve the problem, or something like this. But the main thing, the heart is in the right place. That's the main thing, that we, knowingly or unknowingly, if we've offended, we try to fix the situation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Very nice point. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So can I just say something on that point? I mean, just for my clarification.
Yeah, I just, before you go, Mataji, just want to ask, is there any other questions? Anyone else? Just to give everyone a chance to speak.
I did have one brief question, if that's okay.
Okay.
I just wanted clarification on Prabhupada's point that ignorance is no excuse. So I don't want to try to pry and get too technical, but at the same time, what exactly context is this speaking about? Material, spiritual? How much can you even separate the two? Because I was thinking babies don't know danger all the time, so yeah, that's all I have to say.
Actually, that's a nice example, because Prabhupada actually uses that example to show how ignorance is no excuse, or ignorance doesn't solve or make us free from the reaction. Because Prabhupada says that the child does not know that fire is harmful.
I was thinking of fire.
Fire will still burn the child.
Right.
And so, of course, the reaction goes to the child, but also to the parents on that. The parents also suffer as a result of that. So the reason why ignorance is no excuse is because we come in a situation of ignorance due to our desire also. You see, due to our past reactions as well. So, and that's Bhagavad Gita, right? This is what we read. We said that a yogi, after unsuccessful practice, is born in the family of aristocratic people. After long practice in the home of a devotee. So, in our past life, we chose or didn't choose Krishna. As a result of that, we were born in a certain situation, and then we chose, ignorance or no ignorance. So, it's very important to understand that. At the same time, there's actually one very nice story where Prabhupada was, or someone, one great devotee was in touch with two devotees. And Prabhupada was being very hard on one devotee and very lenient on another devotee. And the devotee he was being very hard on came to Prabhupada and he said, "Why are you so hard on me and so lenient on this devotee?" And he said, "I'm hard on you because you were born in a Brahmin family. You had this Vedic culture since childhood. And if you perform sinful activities, your reaction will be greater. But this other devotee, Krishna consciousness is very new for them. They came from a family or from habits. They had habits that they were born or they grew up with that were not good. So Krishna will be more lenient with them because they'll understand that, they had less going for them initially, at least. And so it will take some time for them. So Prabhupada took that into account, what to speak of Krishna. And Krishna is, again, it's all about the heart. Where is the heart? That's what Krishna is saying. He's saying, are we being purposely whimsical? Are we using ignorance as a crutch for our mistakes? Or are we actually actively trying to gain knowledge so that we don't?
Thank you. Yes, that makes perfect sense. It's just like it's just how when you get a karmic reaction, eventually, later on down the line, you see how Krishna carefully orchestrated everything and how, because of this one event that may have appeared to be like an eruption, it actually blew away those pieces of your life that were holding you back. So like when the baby goes up to the fire and gets burnt, it doesn't want to do it anymore. It has no desire to touch the fire anymore. So thank you for that clarification.
Rupini Mataji. Thank you. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for the wonderful class. Prabhuji, I had a question like, when you're talking about the desires, how we know that, it's aligning with Krishna's desire, because right now, for say a practical example, we are trying to look for a house, because we want to don't spend so much Krishna's money. We think that way. And then, we can have programs at our house. But, in that finding the house and doing all those things, the problem is like, we don't like it and, we don't know what to do and the market is not good. So it's like, are we actually doing it for Krishna or is it only for our satisfaction? It becomes, the line becomes very blurry. So I don't know how to differentiate, how are we even wasting our energy unnecessarily saying that, we are going to do for Krishna, we are not going to do for ourselves, and just looking house after house after house. I don't know, it's a little bit.
I know all about this, Mataji. I just went on a house search and was trying to find a house similarly, and then the same conflict that you're speaking of, like should I spend money on this and should I not? And long ago, kind of sometime back long ago, in the same spirit of not wanting to spend too much for ourselves, trying to spend more for Krishna, I got a house that was too small, and then it didn't work out for everyone. And it's like, things were chaotic and it just wasn't working. So it's like, the recognition kind of where we at in our spiritual life and what will practically work for our cultivation in Krishna consciousness. Like, space is important, space is necessary. So we may need the space so that everyone can peacefully, execute Krishna consciousness. On the other hand, I've practically seen that sometimes devotees get a big home, myself included, and then um, then they become less Krishna conscious. It's all about the home. They become a little arrogant, right? Pride comes in because when you have a nice, beautiful home, um, Ganapati Swami, he would say that after they get a home, it takes 1 full year before they're back into their Krishna consciousness again. He says the 1 full year. But it doesn't have to be that way. Generally, he was saying that. So every case is different. It's very hard to specify which one. But we have to look our motivation and be very determined that whatever I take, I will use it in Krishna service. So it's like the example in the scripture. This is actually very nice. So that the parents, they pray for a son, they pray for a child, so that they have a child, to serve Krishna, and then Krishna gives them the son. But then once they get the son, they forget about Krishna. Then it's all about the son. Krishna gave us a son, and we do that. So I think that's the main risk. So we have desires we need to fulfill, and we want to get the home. That's very good. But then when we are happy and we get the home, will we remember to use it in Krishna service? I think that's the challenge for all of us with homes, that, are we going to, because it's a big headache holding programs, right? It can be a big struggle. It gets dirty, or someone drops juice on the new carpet, or, something like this. So then at that time, did I get this for Krishna? Did I get this to go through this difficulty? Or now that the carpet is so beautiful, I don't want anyone to walk on it. So, yes.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, but I just went through that. Oh my gosh, it was like it's like house hunting. It's like it's a truly becoming a hunting, right? It's like uh, more difficult than hunting, more entangling. So
Thank you.
thank you. Vivek Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you so much for a really nice class and discussion. The question or point that really struck me in your class is, Prabhuji, is with all the kleshas and the sinful reactions and the flowcharts that you showed, it appears that the root of the problem lies, at least for myself, is the avidya part, the ignorance, right? So you beautifully quoted as well as Giriraj Swami Maharaj's point of being or always trying to align ourselves with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. You mentioned. So does it mean that as long as we stay under that shelter of always trying to align with those three factors, then the avidya portion doesn't manifest and the remaining portion doesn't happen? How does it work, Prabhuji? If you can throw some light on that.
Yes, no, it's a fact, no, Prabhu. That is the safest way, because then, although we don't have the knowledge, which takes a lot of time, we are we are we are under the protection of the knowledge of someone who does have knowledge, or people who do have knowledge. So it's similar to employing a lawyer, right? That we don't have the law, we don't know the law, but if the lawyer is looking out for us, then it's as good as we knowing the law, because they're experts in the field, or a CA for our taxes, whatever, because they have so much knowledge in that area. That's equivalent to us having the knowledge to use their guidance. So this checks and balances system that Prabhupada is giving Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, it's a checks and balances that protects us. So we don't know, is my Guru self-realized or not? And later on, I may be cheated by this person. I'm thinking they're self-realized, but maybe they're not. But then Sadhu and Shastra, the sadhus are saying, no, he is self-realized. The Shastra is saying, okay, they have the characteristics, so now I'm protected. So I don't have the knowledge, but I'm getting the knowledge from the other source. In the same way, I don't know if I should get this job or not.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Does that answer your question, Prabhu? Any follow-up on that?
No, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Shaili Mataji? Shaili Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, very, very nice class. Thank you so much. I have a question about you show that flow chart of the waves of devotion, avidya, bijam, papam. So my question is, how can you make a non-devotee understand about this process? And suppose that person has the alcohol addiction, how to make that person overcome by explaining this process? Because already that person is so much addicted. The Krishna consciousness part will not going to come. It will be like a lecture to that person that what you're talking about. So how to make that person understand, in such a simple language, that this whatever he is doing is not good, and this is the cycle of material entanglement for him.
That's good. It's very difficult because if they don't want to listen, then how do you tell them? They become more angry, right? They become more angry. It's very interesting that even Alcohol Anonymous, they say how without a spiritual life you cannot overcome this. And even in material circles, they recognize the damage that this does, drinking alcohol, both personally on the person and also to the people around them, because the people around them suffer a lot as well due to the most domestic abuse and things that happen after people are intoxicated. So the thing is that for material things, sometimes we also have to take material, you could say, use material tools or helpers, even though our goal is spiritual. So to a person who is not a devotee and they're unwilling to listen, if they're willing to listen, then we can explain them very simply that, this, it just creates our desire for it more. It creates a proclivity or attraction to it even more. The more we do it, the more we become attached to it. So we can try to explain to them, the more we do this, the more you'll get attached to it. You'll never feel satisfied. There'll never be enough. But another thing we should do is try to get resources from these, you could say, material organizations. And you think, well, why am I saying this if spiritual life is the solution? It's just like if we break a finger, then we go to the doctor, right? Even though we're a devotee, we still go to the doctor because it's a material problem. And a devotee can, with the principle of yukta vairagya, can use the material world in Krishna service. So it's a spiritual solution, but we're utilizing the material world for that. The same thing is with troubles with the mind in terms of alcohol and things like this, that sometimes the mind is also a material subtle element. It's also material. So sometimes we can use material resources, just like we use the doctor, we can use the resources in the material world to help us overcome these things. So the point being that this is in the purview of bhakti, but it's also, we cannot, it's also not that, it's also something that may need to be taken care of by the process of yukta vairagya, engaging material resources in Krishna service. Because once we're a pure devotee on the platform of pure devotion, then all of our attachments just fall away automatically. But until we come to that level, we may need to use other methods or other resources to solve these. If that makes sense. I'm not sure if it does.
Yes, Prabhuji. So do you know any organizations over here, like inside in ISKCON, where they deal with this kind of issue and help that person?
Yes. Ram Bhoru Mataji, she has this counseling service that she does for devotees. It's very nice. if you text me, I can send you the email address. So there's a whole group of devotees at ISKCON that do like counseling and things like that for other devotees. Now, if this person is not a devotee, then their methods may not work, because for non-devotees, there's actually very, very effective organizations out there that will do even better than what devotees are doing. But sometimes devotees are struggling with not just this, but other things like, relationship problems, family, divorces, things like that. And they need help, and they're also devotees. And so how to apply Krishna conscious philosophy to help and how to do that. So they've actually made a very nice group, and there's a group of devotee counselors. So if you need that, I can email you their email. I can send you their email.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I will text you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we have Ambika Mataji. Would you like to give the comment you're going to give? I cannot hear you.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Just a minute, Prabhuji. Sorry. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Sorry, it was two computers, Prabhuji's and my side by side. So sorry about that. So no, the comment that I wanted to clarify when you were answering the question for Kishore Prabhu, how do you really like not get into situation where you don't offend other devotees, because it's the biggest problem when you are in the devotee communities, and if you have so many devotees around you, and everybody's different, obviously, everything comes from heart. We know what is our intentions are, what's in our heart. Krishna knows our intentions, but sometimes even unintentionally, some devotees, they get offended. And maybe it's just your chemistry between other devotees, specific devotees. So you said you try to avoid the situation, but sometimes I have heard some practical tips, and in one of the lectures somebody said maybe by how do you avoid, by not really interacting so much with that person, just for quite maybe just for an interval or a period. So is it practical? What is your take on that? Maybe just remove yourself from that situation, so it doesn't happen. Can you share some of your thoughts?
Yeah, sometimes that helps, like you're saying, that helps. Sometimes just remaining quiet helps. So like, a devotee is attacking you for something, and like this, so not immediately responding, taking some time, or just remaining just not letting the conversation spiral out. So you have an effort to resolve it, but sometimes resolving is not going to work. So every situation is different, and we can consult other devotees, the senior devotees, and they can step in and solve it, how to work it out. But the solution is not always the same every time. The solution is not always, this is going to work, but we can main thing is not to react, but to consult another devotee who's more senior to us, and just do it in the mode of goodness, trying to solve it in the mode of goodness.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, I have a question. Prabhu, so yesterday was the first time after 1.5 years we all went out for Harinam Sankirtan and distributed books. So it is all mercy of Krishna. Yes. So Prabhu, I have a question. Like whenever I go, usually we interact with Americans, and I always try to make them chant from that small book, the on chanting Hare Krishna, and then they chant. They don't know, but sometimes they ask me that what is the meaning. But before I tell them meaning, I tell them just follow me, and then they, by Guru Maharaj mercy, they just speak the whole mantra. And what I have understood so far that like even today we read what Srila Prabhupada says that even they chant once, their all sins are eradicated, the sinful reactions are over. But at the same time, we say that at the time of initiation, the karmas are burned. and then we talk more details about sinful. So I just wanted to understand more in that context, that when we go and talk to completely non-devotees, karmis, materialists, and they chant, so how does the whole thing play out in their role? Even once, like they may chant in future, I give them pamphlet and they chant, or they may not chant, but even once when they're chanting indirectly, like even a Jamil case.
Right.
So how would you connect everything together? I would just want to know their fate and the whole process.
There's actually a big discussion on this verse in the commentaries of Acharyas on what does this mean, that even if one once chants the Mahamantra, all their sinful reactions, past, present, and future, are eradicated. And I mean, we have to take that statement literally. We cannot, we cannot question the power of the chanting. So they actually, the scriptures tell us that no, it is true. That it is true that this is the case, and this is why chanting is so special, and we cannot minimize the importance of this. But the way the Chaitanya Charitamrita, I believe, explains it, and other acharyas, that it's like a seed that's planted in the ground. So that's why chanting is so wonderful. Ultimately, that will fructify. Ultimately, that person who has chanted, who you got these people to chant, they will come to the platform of bhakti, and all their sinful reactions will be burnt, and their sinful reactions have been burnt. But how fast we want to come to that point, that is up to them, and that is up to us, you see. So now when they've chanted, they started their journey. At that moment, they've started their journey to Krishna. The day we have chanted, we've started our journey to Krishna. But now we can make it 100 lifetimes or 1,000 lifetimes or 1,000,000 lifetimes. That is up to us. And so the devotee, that's why they get people to chant, but they also try to cultivate people, namahata, all these things. Why is this necessary? If chanting is perfect, why is all this necessary? Because this will speed up the process. This will, make the process faster.
So sinful reactions, how would we say? Like they are burnt up when they chant one time? Would we say that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the verse says. Let me go back here, what exactly it says, and we can see. And I'm forgetting what that discussion is, but there's a whole discussion on this verse. I'm forgetting the details of it, how it's. Where did that verse go? Yes, here. Yes, this is Madhya 15, 107. Simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna once, a person is relieved from all the reactions of sinful life. Yes. So once all the reactions of one's sinful life are once relieved from them, which means that the process of bhakti is started. So we cannot overcomplicate it. It basically means one is relieved. It means that the process of bhakti has begun for that person. And the process of bhakti, as we are seeing, it is moksha lagutakrit. It is kleshagni, that all these sinful reactions go away for that person. Yeah.
So that means that whatever sinful reactions that person had till now, all are gone.
No.
But
no, it doesn't mean that. A person is relieved. So one is relieved, but that doesn't mean that it immediately goes away. It means that the going away process has started. The going away process has started. A person is relieved from the reactions of sinful life. So a person chants Hare Krishna, and then they go and steal something, they end up in jail, all these things. So reactions will still continue, but now their life from now on is different. Krishna is now personally taking charge of their life. At the time of initiation, if all the sinful reactions are gone, then what's the significance of initiation? At the time of initiation, Prabhupada says, When we formally take to the chanting of the holy name, initiation means specifically within our heart, we've accepted Krishna and the Guru, then all of our sinful reactions are gone because we've made a formal commitment at that time. Krishna, Guru, I'm accepting you. And again, it's when we do it in our heart, not just the actual yajna. So that's key. But then once, if we just chant it once, then the process of purification has begun. Process of bhakti has begun. When someone receives a book, again, their path to spiritual life has begun. The direct path to spiritual life has begun. That's why it's so nice, book distribution or Harinam. Nice question.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Yes, thank you so much for clarifying, because I was wondering, even Garima was with me yesterday and she was distributing books and she was asking, so Ma, now he became devotee? All the sins are gone, and today we were discussing about sinful and everything. So I was wondering, but thank you so much for clarifying. That's very deep to understand. Thank you so much. So I appreciate you helping us.
Yes, thank you so much. And it's a very wonderful discussion today. Thank you everyone for your kind attention. I'll post your homework on WhatsApp as I always do. And next week we will begin from where we left off, and have a wonderful week. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.